I'm so glad all of you are here to join us today for our webinar on learning teams with the class of 2023. We are just past the noon hour here on the East Coast, and we're going to go ahead and get started. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to start with an introduction of myself before I turn it over to our team of talented class of 2023 students. Thank you again for joining today's Ask an Emba panel. My name is Joanne Legler, and I'm the Director of Admissions for the MBA for Executives program at Yale SOM. As you might know, the Ask an Emba webinar series gives prospective students, applicants, or in this case, I see some of our incoming students from the class of 2024 here today, the opportunity to hear straight from the students and the alumni from our program about topics that are unique to Yale SOM, but we'll also take the opportunity to speak more broadly about what it's like to be an executive MBA student working while going to school. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by members of the class of 2023. 5 of them are here to discuss their experiences during their first year in the program as part of the same learning team. What is a learning team? In the first year of our program, all students are assigned to a small 6 to 7 student learning team. Teams are crafted by our staff, the admissions team, who gets to know you so well through the admissions process. And our goal is to include a diversity of backgrounds, experiences. As a learning team, students work on projects, they collaborate on group work, and support each other through the first year. During our webinar, it goes by in a quick 45 minutes. Our panelists will talk about how teams fit into the structure of the program and what their learning teams have meant to them. If there are a few minutes towards the end of the session, we'll absolutely open it up to your questions. You can put your questions into the chat at any time, and if there are some that we can answer on the back end, my colleague Liz is here to help make sure that our webinar runs smoothly and can answer some of those questions, or perhaps I'll pop in and help out as well. Otherwise, we'll wait till the end of our session together and ask the questions of our students. So if you have any of those questions, feel free to put them into the chat at any point. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mishi Knight, a member of the class of 2023, who will kick off our event with introductions. Mishi, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Hi, everyone. I am Mishi Knight, and I use pronouns she, her. I'm part of the class of 23, as you heard from Joanne. My area of focus is healthcare, and today I am in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I traditionally work at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is based in New Jersey. So I'm going to turn to my colleagues shortly to introduce themselves as well. But before I do that, I wanted to start with a little bit of an icebreaker. And it will take the form of our traditional Friday morning panel of peers. That's something you'll learn about if you don't already know what that is. And so I'm asking my teammates here to share with us, you know, a little bit of something. So what is it that folks could learn about you that they wouldn't traditionally find in open spaces like the internet or on your MySpace page or MySpace? That's a throwback, on your LinkedIn or on your Twitter feed. And I will start. So for me, I like my challenges in pairs. And what I mean by that is every time I start a new job, or when I started the Emba program and we neared the stress curve, the incoming students, you will get to know that very, very soon. I often throw in something else that keeps me physically active. And so for me, that is training for a marathon. So when I started the Emba program at the start of any new job, I also start training for a marathon. And the reason why I do this is because as the stresses and as the overwhelm of everything else seeps in, I realize that exercise is the first thing that goes from my schedule. So if I need to train for a race, it automatically helps me to build it in. So that's something that you wouldn't necessarily find about me. With that, I'm going to turn to Alicia, then Ivan, then Richard, and then Tim to introduce themselves and share a little bit too.
Thank you, Mishi. Good morning, everyone. I'm saying good morning because I am in California. So I'm in the healthcare focus area. I work in healthcare, of course. I'm the CEO of a federally qualified health center. So we serve about 40,000 low-income patients across 2 counties in California. And I will also share something similar to Mishi. I didn't know she was going to talk about marathons, but I also do marathons, although my commitment is to run one every decade, because that's just about all I can handle with 3 kids and a full-time job. So, and I will turn it over to Ivan.
Thank you, Misha and Alicia. Ivan, and I would say good afternoon because I'm right here close to the school in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm a tax and distribution analyst in Invesco. This is a huge mutual fund, and I'm in an asset management track. And this is what you can learn about me in LinkedIn. What you cannot learn about me is that I, just as Misha, I prefer physical exercise to fight stress, and I do capoeira, which is an amazing thing, but it's a different story. And Richard?
Oh, sorry. Hey, I'm Richard Winchell. I'm in the sustainability track. I am normally in New York City, Europe, so good evening from me. I'm a senior product design manager at a company called Ceridian, which makes human capital management software, and something that you probably can't find on the internet, though you might be able to dig up something on archive.org, is that I really love cats, but I also am very, very allergic to them. Tim, you want to finish this off?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Richard. My name is Tim Kyla. I'm calling in from Portland, Maine today, where I work at a multifamily office in the private equity space. One thing, I'm also in the sustainability track as well. One thing that you wouldn't find on social media about me is actually that I have 2 kids. I'm not on much social media. So I have a son, Theo, who's 7, and a daughter, Kai, who's 4.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. And now before we sort of dig into the learning team topic, I'm going to ask each of you to share your origination story. So how did you get to the Emba program, and specifically, how did you choose Yale? So while you're thinking about that, I will say that, I've always wanted to pursue an MBA. I felt that it's a great complement to the skills and resources of my nonprofit job. So I work in philanthropy, and in that space, it allows me to think really a lot about impact and investments in social sector over time. And I thought the complement of what I could learn from private sector would help me to think more deeply about how I invest in the communities that our programs serve. So it was a nice mesh for me. During the pandemic, I, like many other folks, turned to baking sourdough bread and banana breads. And after I was done doing that and failed miserably, I thought I would give time to studying for an MBA. And I dug in, and really after much research and looking at Yale and the offerings, sustainability, asset management, healthcare, it felt like it would provide me a well-rounded experience with a multitude of classmates. And it has completely lived up to that expectation. I couldn't have made a better decision for myself. So I would love to hear more from Tim and Richard about, tell us, me, the audience, about your experience in considering applying to the program and what made you choose Yale specifically.
I can jump in there first. So for me, it was a combination of 2 things that made me want to do it now. I've always wanted to do an MBA. I wanted to do it at some point, and with my kids getting older, I knew that if I waited too long, it wouldn't happen. So I knew I needed to do it. I also had kind of a mentor at my job leave, who was the smartest guy in the room. And so I needed to surround myself with a lot people that were smarter than myself. And I found that in spades at Yale for sure. I also am working at a company that has, a pretty an older leadership team. And so there's going to be some transitions of leadership in the next 10 years, and wanted to prepare myself for that. In terms of kind of where I looked, Yale was the only school that I applied to. It was the only school that I wanted to go to. Part of that is because a lot of my heroes in the work that I do are at Yale. David Swenson is one of those, Robert Schiller. A lot of the research that I found pretty compelling in the asset management spaces, which is where I spend a lot of my time, has come out of Yale. And so being able to kind of be among those great thinkers, I was able to take the endowment management class with Dean Takahashi this year, which was unbelievable and kind of a dream of mine. So there really wasn't a better space than Yale for me. And then when you combine that with business and society and my interest in sustainability and sustainable investing, there really is kind of no other place than Yale for that. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Richard.
Thanks. Sorry for the background noise. I had thought about doing an MBA for ages. A couple of years ago, I did a week-long executive education class at Yale. That was a joint venture between Yale and the AIGA. And I just loved it and wanted more. And suddenly I realized that, oh yeah, that MBA thing. And Yale's emphasis on society and how business leaders can impact society, and plus the sustainability track, both just made Yale like pretty much the absolute first choice. And I applied to a second school just because it was 15 minutes from my apartment, but it was just always like kind of Yale or bust.
Thank you both. And Ivan and Alicia, what were some of the things you felt a bit anxious or unsure about when you considered taking on an MBA? And what were you excited about?
Well, I was a little bit anxious about the commute, given that I'm coming from California to Yale, although just to reflect back also on my own process of applying, Yale was the only school that I applied to, despite the geographic distance. And it was because of the different tracks, specifically the healthcare focus area, as well as the Posen Commonwealth Fund Fellowship for Health Equity, which really aligns with my values and interests in trying to solve complex problems in the healthcare space. But I've been in my company for 13 years. I've been CEO for 4. And so I was really excited to have more exposure to leaders in healthcare working from different sectors and bringing that diversity of experience to the conversation. And I was also really excited about the fact that it was an in-person program. And again, there's challenges to that, but I think the quality of people who end up in this program and who apply for this program is just incredible. And I've learned just as much from my peers as I have from the professors. And it's just been such a collaborative and great learning environment. Of course, for me, my previous master's is in social work, and I do not have a lot of quantitative experience in terms of coursework. So I definitely was a little nervous about what the courses would require from the quantitative perspective. That's where the learning team comes in. We've had such incredible support, and having asset managers and other folks blended in, the fact that we all get to work together and collaborate has made that also a really great part of the experience.
Oh, thanks, Alicia. For me, just as for Alicia, so distance was a bit of a factor because I'm coming from Toronto, Canada, and it was just a bit far, maybe not as far as California, but still, but excitement was bigger than that. And one of the factors was that Yale, there are not that many schools which focus exactly on asset management, and SOM has this track, this particular track, which was of interest for me, to build a career. Another very interesting thing when I was discussing with people about schools and programs, and somebody told me, so you talk about sustainability, you talk about ESG environment, you really sound like Yale material, and it clicked for me. Well, yeah, and there's it's a great place if you think about these. If you want to learn more, if you want to talk to people who also care, this was another great excitement in the program.
Thank you. So to think a little bit more about our orientation and sort of getting to know one another. Most of us, orientation was the first time that we met, and there was an interesting process of revealing who our teammates would be. So I'm inviting you all to sort of reflect on that a bit, but also to say, how did you get to know your teammates during residency and orientation? What was special about that 2-week period we spent up in New Haven? What surprised you about what you learned? And what did you learn about yourself in the process as well? And this time I will start with Tim, and then would love to hear a bit from Alicia and Richard, and then Ivan, and I'll say a bit too about my experience.
Yeah, sure. So the process of finding out who was on your learning team was kind of a fun one. We all got kind of these cards with kind of a word or phrase written on it, and we had to find kind of who was like us. And so there was all sorts of different themes, but it was kind of a process of going around and talking to a bunch of people and figuring out what we all had in common on our cards. And I think we were museums, if I got that right. Museums in the New Haven area. So that was kind of a fun process. But I think overall, the first 2 weeks is a pretty intense 2 weeks. You're basically going through a couple of graduate level courses kind of smashed into a very short time. And that came with all the kind of the coursework and the homework assignments. And so, along with class, there was plenty of time to do homework and finish assignments and that sort of thing. And so there was several late nights of kind of us all together working on assignments and trying to figure out not only the answers, but help people kind of learn the material along the way. And I think that's an important part of the learning team, which we'll talk about in the future. It's not only about getting the right answer, but it's about getting everyone to the right answer so that they understand it. And so that entire process, I think, was really a growing experience for us and our team. You'll also go through some exercises as part of the class material that's kind of designed to bring you closer together and to share kind of among the team and get to know your teammates a whole lot better. And so that was a really cool process for us. I know we had a couple team dinners, and I'd love Ivan to tell the Russian doll story if he could, but it was just a great chance to kind of be in the foxhole together and get closer through kind of getting through all that material in such a short amount of time.
Want to jump in, Ivan?
Yeah. So we knew from the beginning that we will be assigned to teams, and I was excited to learn who my teammates would be and everything and anything about that, because I told to students, to alums before, and they say they told don't underestimate the importance of the team, and I prepared some souvenirs, some gifts for them, which I really wanted to share, because just to show how I would appreciate my team members and collaboration and friendship within the team. And I think that worked well. I mean, since Tim was mentioning it, so that was really great. I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the meeting, and that was a great discovery, just really amazing journey. Because I was so lucky to get in this team with this amazing folks on this panel, and yeah, probably I can talk about this all day and all night, but yeah, this was and is a great and amazing experience.
Richard? Can I just add? Sorry, I wanted to jump on the Russian doll piece for one moment, because when we left residency, I kept my doll. I still have it right next to my working desk where I do all my studying. And I think that was it's been a good reminder for me over the course of this year that I'm not alone in this journey. I have a group of people who are there to support me and that I can reach out at any time, which I did several times with Ivan, since he has a PhD in economics, which came in handy for some of our courses. But for me, what I would say in learning in the first 2 weeks was, I don't think you realize how often in your work settings that there can just be, there's a lot of transactional conversations and it's fast paced and you're moving through. And I think what these 2 weeks gave us as our foundation as a team was the ability to connect on a deeper level and get to know each other as people in terms of our interests, our values, what we care about, our background, our stories. And to me, that was just as important as the classwork and the homework and the support and the learning process. And so I think, building that foundation in the way that Yale sets that up and sets you up for success was really, really critical to my whole first year experience.
Yeah, it's just absolutely magical, I will add. And Richard, if you might reflect on, what did you learn about yourself during this time of residency?
Well, first, I just want to mention that Alicia nailed like what the connection was between us, because I remember once we got the cards, she was sitting directly behind me in orientation, and she said, "Oh, hey, I think we're on the same team." And I just kind of looked at the thing and I was like, "Are we?" And then, yes, of course we were, and of course she nailed it like right at the beginning. I think for me, the thing that I learned being on this, that I've learned from this team and being on this team, because it's 5 of the most amazing people I've ever met, and I just love them to death. I think it's just I don't even know how to answer that really. It's like I just feel like I've become like a much better version of myself being around all of you.
Amazing. And Richard is saying 5 because one of our classmates, Ali Platon, was not able to be on the webinar today, but wanted to acknowledge that she is the person who makes us magnificent 7. You, during the course of your time, will, name your team. You will do lots and lots of work together. And I think that was part of the fun. So one of the things that I would say that I learned about myself is we were coming out of pandemic mode. And I thought I was prepared for the reintroduction into social settings. And I think the combination of the overwhelming presence of 74 other people and the intensity of the classwork over the 2 weeks made me realize that maybe I wasn't quite so ready after all. And I think it was a conversation with Richard where we sort of dug into imposter syndrome and what that meant, and the reintroduction into the world as it now is very different from what we had encountered the 2.5 or so years prior. That brought me into a space of vulnerability where I felt like I could put my guard down, I could take the walls away, and I could allow these people to get to know me, and I could get to know them. And after that, I would say the experience for me shifted dramatically. It was one of recognizing that, as Alicia said, you are definitely not alone in this. And there are folks who have your back, your side, your front, whether it's personal, professional, schoolwork. We leaned on each other for so much. The diversity of our group also helped in a lot of ways. We had conversations. Our world is different now. There are modern day conflicts and warfare, and some of our classmates were impacted by that. And we got to learn from them and we got to support them through that. So it's definitely about the relationships that you build. And a lot less about sort of the transactional nature and the fast pace of what this program is. So I'm going to use that to transition us into talking about overcoming challenges and hearing a little bit more about what kinds of challenges you face. What were some of the major obstacles for you, and what was helpful in our learning team that helped you navigate those tough times and sort of come out on the other end after year 1. This time I will start with you, Alicia, and then see if maybe Ivan wants to jump in.
Sure. So, and I see there's a question in the chat too about challenges working in teams. And I would say, we were really fortunate. I think that's part of the reason that we're talking with all of you today, because we did have such a positive experience. But I would say one of the reasons that we did was because we took all of the instruction and guidance very seriously. And I know that wasn't the case for all teams. So there were times when we had to, separate off and do some sharing about ourselves or they would recommend you need to make sure you go out to dinner, spend some time together, and then make sure that we're meeting regularly once we got back from residency. And I know some teams said, oh, do we really have to do this? Let's just kind of hang out, or we don't have to discuss this topic, let's chat about something else. And so they missed those crucial fundamental bonding experiences that we took seriously. And we really talked about process, and we held each other accountable to the processes that we defined and that we wanted to use. And they're, simple things like if someone sends out a message on the chat, how, we expect a response within a certain amount of time, or if we can't make a meeting, are we going to keep the meeting or reschedule it based on people's availability? And we really committed to trying to ensure that we would have a meeting with 100% participation, or we would move it if possible. So it was really about setting expectations, because you have this intense experience together, and then you go home and you still have to be highly productive and highly functional as a team. And if you haven't done that groundwork and you haven't agreed upon your sort of working style, it just falls apart really quickly. And then the stress is high, the frustration seeps in. And I think that's where we saw other people go, maybe a little bit sideways with their learning teams. So that would be my biggest recommendation, is just, it's designed in a certain way for a reason. It's because it works. So don't cut any corners, especially those first 2 weeks.
I'll continue. Yeah. So trust the process, because everything starting from team combination and then actually teamwork or team class was very first class for us, and that was not without a reason. And really, amazing Yale faculty give amazing techniques and knowledge about team making, working together. And just as Alicia said, don't cut any corners, just do it. And this is an amazing journey. So we did it, and there is a significant factor in our team development, very important. So basically, trust the process, and you will get there. To amazing and functional team. That's really great.
Ivan, you shared the Russian doll story, but there was also more to our bonding as a team. And I think you have a cookie story. So I'm going to invite you to share that.
Okay, Russian dolls, just some Russian origin. So there is a famous Russian doll where there is doll and there's another doll within and another doll. And just that was a great symbol of a teamwork. Actually, we work as one. And at the very first meeting, I just shared this, and everyone in the team got her or his part of this doll. So it's sort of a great reminder that we're together. To work together, we make something great, and everyone is a part of team, just inseparable. I think it was a really good symbol of unity, and yeah, I think it worked. Thank you guys again. Yeah, and another story, cookie story. It's between me and Alicia. It was residence week. I don't want to scare everyone, but it was like 11 p.m. and we are tired from classes today, but we still have lots of homework before tomorrow morning, and I was in a desperate need for a sugar, which I couldn't find anyway. And it was just maybe second or third day of us as a team, and so it's almost midnight, and I'm reaching out where can I get some sugar? And Alicia was like, I have it, I got it. And it was such an interesting moment, just a sugar at the midnight, but so impressive. This is your teammate, who is ready to help you basically anytime with anything. Just so I think this cookie memory with us forever.
And we had wine too, so it wasn't just sugary desserts. There were adult libations from time to time, which made homework so much easier. So one of the things that we mentioned early on about our learning team is the diversity. So you can see here that we're asset management, we're sustainability, we're healthcare. We are different demographically, geographically. So there's so much rich diversity to our teams and to our program in general. And I want to ask you all to reflect on how did the diversity, including diversity of thought, come into play as you worked through the first year core curriculum? I'm going to start with Tim, and then I'll share a few thoughts of my own as well.
Yeah, so I'll speak a little bit to the academic side to start off. I know Alicia had mentioned some people come into their MBA and they're a little bit anxious about the quant piece of it or the numbers piece of it. And I think what the admissions staff does really, really well is set up these learning teams so that there is this great diversity of skill sets across the group. And that includes on the quant side. And so, you know, there's always a certain number of really good quants in a group to balance out people that don't necessarily have that same background. And we found that in our group as well. So there's really two challenges. One is if you're not a quant, are you going to be able to hack the quant? And then the second kind of challenge that if you are a quant is, are you going to be able to grow in your quant skills through the MBA? And I think the answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes. So, you know, we had kind of quants and non-quants. And as I talked about, for each of these homework assignments early on, I remember stats and econ, we would actually go through each problem kind of line by line and kind of help each person in the group. So if you were a quant, you were kind of a required teacher in that setting to help out with how did we get from here to here and then here to there and there to there, and how did we get to the answer ultimately. And, you know, that's one of the things I think this group did really well is it wasn't just about how fast can we get to the answer. It was really, you know, we're all here just to learn the material and not necessarily to win gold stars. And so how do we structure our meetings so that we're actually helping everybody learn rather than just blowing by things and trying to get it done quickly. And so kind of there was a really great back and forth between the quants and the non-quants, and sometimes we'd have kind of people that wanted more practice get up and kind of lead a problem. And so that diversity of thought I thought was excellent. And then if you are a quant, you're just going to get blown away by other quants in your group. I thought I was going to be pretty good at econ, kind of walking in, and then ran into the brick wall of Ivan, PhD in economics, just phenomenal, brilliant guy. I thought I was pretty good at PowerPoint presentations, and then ran into Richard, who's just an unbelievable creative mind who it's just stunning what he can do with his kind of design eye. And then you also kind of find things out about people. I think Richard, just this brilliant creative, was a stealth quant kind of throughout the first year, and he became just like not a stealth quant by the end. He was just a full-blown quant. So I think we actually had an extra quant in our group that the admin staff didn't know about. But I think that's a really good, it's a really good balance. The admissions team does a really good job of putting these teams together to create that diversity, particularly on the academic side. And we found that out really early. And it just allows you to not walk into the room thinking you're the smartest guy in the room or the smartest gal in the room, but to really step back and let kind of all the voices in the room kind of create this much better final product than any one of us could have done on our own. So I think that's a really, really powerful part of the learning teams.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. I'll, in reflecting on this question, I think for me, the 2 years of COVID-19 had really rocked me in ways that I hadn't even imagined. I was born and raised in Jamaica, and I moved to the US as a teenager. And I often tell the story that, you know, I became Black in America. And I say that because it wasn't my foremost identity when I lived in Jamaica. And so coming here, it became that. And the 2 years of pandemic brought out such disparities and such deep inequities and such challenges, not just in healthcare sector where I work, but in our country as a whole. And I needed a place to process that. And I didn't think that everyone would understand it. But there were times when it was brought into our classroom, into our everyday learning. I remember we did the Black Lives Matter case, and I just needed more conversations. And as we gathered as a team, we met every Monday consistently at noon Eastern time. And those were spaces where I felt like I could have the conversations that impacted me personally. And my teammates would listen, and they would engage, and they would be curious and ask questions. And it was so enriching, because not only are you sort of separated by the fact that you have to be in your own tiny little bubble owing to the events of the pandemic and when you could go out and when you could see folks, and we're all in tiny little squares on our screen. And so the raw emotion and pain and even the joy of what is changing and what is different and the expectations and aspirations, it was different. And every week every 2 weeks, we would go to New Haven and we would meet and we would have dinner and we would talk, and we would come back on Monday and we would meet online and we would have more conversations. And I don't know if I've said this to my teammates about how much that helped me to process some of what I was feeling and going through, and how much it helped to hear the experiences of others, just to help me know that I'm not alone. We're seeing things similarly. We're understanding what our respective roles could be. And that helped me to show up to the work in a different headspace. So thank you all for that. I don't know if I've said that enough, but thank you. And now we're gonna move into a bit of year 2. So as you think about entering your second year of the program, beginning with the second week of residency in July, which now will be only 1 week, I'm sure we'll all miss that 2-week period. And your areas of focus and curriculum, what are you most looking forward to in the year ahead? And how do you plan to stay connected with our team? I will do another around the horn. I'll start with Richard, jump to Alicia, then Ivan, then Tim.
Thanks. So I'm mostly excited about just getting to go into depth with all the sustainability classes. I think there's one that's supposed to be basically like a really hardcore financial modeling. I think even more than what the asset management folks get. So pretty excited to dig into that. Yeah, it's like I'm really hoping that we continue to meet on at least one Monday a month or something. And I think we've talked about continuing our own team meetings among this group. And I think the great thing about seeing each other every 2 weeks is, you know, we can always see, you know, you have a break together or have dinner together. And, you know, we've got the WhatsApp connections as well. So I'm not worried about losing touch with anybody here. And I think we're all kind of bound together for a very long time after this.
Was I next, Mishi? Okay. Yeah, I'm really excited about going deeper on healthcare, although, you know, sort of ironically or unexpectedly, I can't believe how much I've gotten out of the program already just by being with the other tracks. And just to give one quick example, so, you know, sustainability as in healthcare is not a top of mind conversation. And unfortunately, we're a huge contributor of, you know, negative impacts overall. But I learned so much just from being in the classroom and talking to other folks who are sort of living and breathing sustainability every day. And I've made significant changes in my own organization just as a result of that. We have a whole section of our strategic plan that's now on environmental stewardship, and working with a consulting company that was recommended by one of my classmates, who's guiding us through how to start tracking and measuring and quantifying our greenhouse, gas emissions, energy use, water use. And so to me, that's so exciting, because it's this, you come into the program with a certain set of expectations, right? I'm a leader in healthcare. I want to broaden my perspective on how to, think differently about healthcare solutions and health equity. And then you get surprised by all of these other learning opportunities that you didn't even expect. And so I think going into the second year, I'm just excited to see what else pops up, because I think, it's impossible to predict what the experience will bring. But so far it's been nothing but really, really good things. So excited for that.
So my turn. I compare this with the development or evolution of relationship, or like when you make your friends in a kindergarten, and you like your friends, but you cannot keep this relationship in this form like forever. It should transform. And we have our learning teams in the first year, and it's very exciting, but it's naturally transforms, which is great. So right now, by the end of year one, we have some interesting projects for the future with the members of our learning team, and probably the biggest of them, we should give credit to Ellie, who is not here right now. And this is a great non-for-profit project, the path forward, and we engaged in it. This is a great idea, and this is something which something would have like a potential to grow above and beyond, and for many, many years ahead, and opportunity for us to stay together and work together to making this good for society, which is amazing. And again, this is a like transformation of relationship within the learning team into something bigger, something like more grown up, if I could say so.
And I'll just add on to the end of that. I think year one is all about the fundamentals. Really, it's about kind of accounting, econ, statistics, investor, learning how to value a company, so that you can put all those things together in year two in your focus area. And so the real fun, I think, is going to be kind of coming up. Not to say that the first year wasn't fun, because I think I learned kind of more in the first year than I have in the last kind of 10 years of work, kind of crunched into 1 year. So a lot of learning has happened, a lot of learning to come. I'm really excited about the sustainability courses in particular that I'm going to be a part of. But like Alicia said, this is really kind of a combination of things. I know in sustainability, we have the sustainable investing class, which is kind of a mashup of asset management and sustainability. And it's amazing, as Alicia said, kind of running into different people and getting those different perspectives from the different tracks really gives you a 360 view of a lot of different problems and questions, particularly on kind of the soft side. I know kind of I walked in as a quant and really tried to focus more on some of the softer skills. And Alicia in particular is just brilliant at kind of people and relationships and managing teams. And so I've learned a tremendous amount from her on the soft skill side. So there's a ton of that going on. And then in terms of keeping in touch, they wouldn't allow us to kind of bring our learning team from year one into year two. I'm sure we probably would have. So I know a piece of our team is kind of stay together in year two learning teams. I decided to go for a brand new learning team. Part of the reason for that is because this team is so solidified that I know it's going to be kind of a group forever, and kind of, it's a group that we'll always kind of come back to, and we'll always get together and talk about things. And as Ivan said, there's been a couple kind of fun projects that have brewed out of this group. He spoke about one particularly. There's another kind of little startup, just a for-profit company that some of us are thinking about how we get that off the ground. And so, it's kind of fun. You never thought you'd do things like that, but you find these little startup projects that are just a blast. And it's a good way for kind of teammates to stay together, just to work on a project together.
Thank you all. And I think the question I have is, I hope we will maintain the tradition of honoring each other on our birthdays. That has been something that we have really leaned into as a team. Interestingly enough, Ivan and Tim share the same birthday. And so we learned that during our time together, and have just been celebrating each other because, it's worth the celebration, if for nothing else, just to get over some of the minutia of the work, but to honor and recognize one another as part of our new team, as part of this extension of a network that we built. So that's what I'm most looking forward to continuing. And our last question, and then I'm going to turn to some audience question. I'm sure you all have lots that you want to hear that I haven't teed up already. Sort of, what is the advice that you would give to prospective students? And there are some incoming students on the call as well. Very briefly, like, what is the advice that you would want to offer? We'll do another round of around the horn. And so Alicia, Ivan, Richard, Tim, and then myself, and we'll have questions after that.
Okay, just quickly, as someone who was, as I mentioned already, sort of less skilled in some of the quantitative areas, I would get sort of a fundamental book like MBA math and just glance over it. If you're not feeling confident, take some time to review the basics. Definitely will help, because it's a very fast pace when you get there.
So trust the process, trust the school process for team building, and trust your team. Like more adult we are, less chances we have to make new friends, and this is an amazing chance. Just go with it.
I think the biggest thing for me was just blocking out time every day, figuring out when I was going to be most productive working on things, and then just setting aside time every day.
Yeah, and for me, I got this advice before I came in. I thought it was really good. Just get all your ducks in a row before residency week. If you have a to-do list for things you want to do around your house, get everything done before residency week starts. Take your wife out for a date, bring your kids out for a vacation or a day off or something like that. Just get everything squared away before you go to residency, so you can give it 100%.
Richard does something for our team and the rest of our group, really, that has been tremendously helpful. And after each class weekend, he sends out a list of the preparation for the next class weekend. And it has been miraculous. So if you want to volunteer in your team as one of the incoming students, to make that list and share it with your teammates and with others, that really does help you to forecast ahead how much time you need to block. I would also say that, relationships and maintaining the relationships outside of school is important to me. And so if that is something Tim just mentioned, like really thinking about and communicating with your family about when you will have time. I've traditionally leaned into the practice of the Saturday that I don't have school is dedicated to family. And so communicating that to my teammates and it helped each of us to understand when we're available and when we're not. And it also helped our family to understand when we're into school big time and when we'll have time to be focused and present with them. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Joanne to see what questions are coming up.
Thank you so much, Misha. We are out of time, so I'm going to shoot you one question to see if anybody wants to pick up on this, which I think is a good one. Just in terms of setting expectations, what did the workload look like during residency in between classes? So of course, you're with us first thing in the morning. There's oftentimes lunch activities. You're back in class in the afternoon. What did the rest of the day look like? Were there long nights? I already, heard Ivan talk about that need for sugar and maybe a little wine in the late nights. Can you harken back to a year ago and remember what the workload felt like, and maybe nostalgically looking back and wondering if it was as intense as you remember it being now with the lens of a year has gone by. But generally speaking, what would you say, how would you tell people to set expectations for that week outside of the very formal classroom time? A lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, Tim.
Yeah, I can take that first. I thought that there was a lot of work to be done, but that was my expectation going in, was that I'd be spending 2 weeks doing class and doing homework. That being said, there were a lot of really fun nights spread out among that, which maybe made you squeeze your homework into, shorter time periods. But, we had class all day, and then I'd say kind of 3 or 4 hours would be kind of the max each day. So if you got done at 6 or whatever, that might bring you to, 9 or 10. Still plenty of time to go out for a drink afterwards and get up early for a run. I thought, and it also is kind of that time horizon can change depending on how much you want to put into it. So I remember there was one econ problem that I must have spent 9 hours on. I know, Richard, you spent kind of a similar amount of time on it, just trying to think through it.
Too much time.
Yeah, so I could have given up after half an hour on that one and saved myself 9 or 10 hours, but it was really fun to try and figure it out. Same with statistics. There were some questions that you could have spent a lot of time on, or you could have given up really quickly. And again, with our learning group, I think we spent more time than average because we walked through every problem and made sure that kind of people were learning the material. And so you could have a more efficient process there. I wouldn't have traded that for the world. I think it did wonders for our group. But again, it's all about trade-offs. But I thought there was a lot of time, but I thought it was a lot of fun and kind of what you're there to do. So.
Thank you, Tim. I want to respect the time of our panelists as well as our audience. And thank you all so much for spending as much time as you did with us, particularly our panelists who spent time prepping for and getting ready for the webinar, as well as spending time with us today. Thank you so much for attending this wonderful webinar. I really appreciate your vulnerability, being so honest about expectations and your experiences. So thank you so much to our webinar participants, Richard, Tim, Ivan, Alicia, to Mishi for being such a wonderful moderator, and Ali Platon, who is another member of this group, unfortunately able to attend, but she is here certainly in spirit. I've heard you reference her quite a bit, and I'm sure she would be here if she could, and I look forward to seeing all of you in just about a month when you come back for year 2 residency. In the meantime, I'll remind our audience that we have a wonderful webinar coming up in July on the executive assessment. So if you're starting to think about standardized test opportunities, we have a great webinar coming up with the admissions team and the GMAC staff, as well as one on the Posen Commonwealth Fund Fellowship at the end of July with our faculty, as well as one of our alumni from that program. Keep an eye out for on-campus information sessions starting in October. We're looking forward to meeting you in person, either here on campus or perhaps when we get back out on the road, which we're very much looking forward to doing. So thank you everyone in our audience for being with us. Thank you again to our wonderful student panelists. Look forward to seeing you soon, and look forward to seeing our audience in person or online at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Take care.